Welcome to biology class. This is a brief introduction to how we're going to be spending our time together. You can tell that we do love our mother, and we'll be spending a great deal of time this year talking about how we as humans impact this planet and what are our roles and responsibilities in that. So what are you doing here? Well, we're hoping that you will become scientifically literate. See, I skipped to number 2 there. What does that mean? That means that when you read the Boston Globe, when you read the New York Times, when you read The Economist, when you read People magazine, and the article is a scientific styled article, you'll be able to understand most of what it's saying, that you'll be able to formulate questions about what's really going on in the article, and get some sense of whether this information is going to impact you and your family. We also want you to learn scientific terms and concepts this year. Last year we did a count of over 420 specific scientific terms that the students were expected to know and to be able to use appropriately in their various work that they created last year. We also want you to grasp the big ideas, the key concepts in biology. So that's things like, how does a cell work? How do I know what's me and what's not me, which we see when we talk about transplant and transplant rejection? How do I fit into this planet? What impact do I have? How do all the animals and plants seem to fit together so well? What's really going on there? And how important is it that I pay attention to how I live and work on this planet? We want you to think as a scientist. That is, develop a sense of logical reasoning, building on the facts and the evidence before you. And finally, I hope that by the end of this year, you will sit there amazed at how complicated you are as a biological being and how complicated the world is in its ability for all these things to work together and to provide a home and a habitat for all of us. How will class unfold each time? Well, very importantly, there will be a daily agenda. And so when you come in and you look up at the board, there'll be a list of things that need to get done that day or topics we're going to discuss. We'll also take a little bit of time at the beginning of class to review assignments and their due dates. Sometimes it will be appropriate to simply introduce the day's material if we're starting a new activity, a new lab, a new unit, just to get you focused. I'm hoping that you will have lots of good questions and that will provide for a very meaty and thoughtful discussion. It's really important that everybody participate and that you bring your knowledge and your questions to the conversation. On occasion, as always in school, there will be quizzes and tests. These will be used to assess your mastery of the material and will contribute in part to your grade. So how are you assessed in class? One of the big focuses students have, especially as juniors, is what's my grade going to be? Well, we look at your performance on tests and quizzes. For some of you, that's fine. For others of you who struggle with tests and quizzes, there are alternative assessments. There are a series of thought questions. And these are questions that I write, and they're really intended to probe the depth of your understanding and your willingness to go beyond the bounds of the class material and integrate what you've newly researched into the answers to those thought questions. None of the thought questions can be Googled for a simple answer, even though we all do love Google. There will be a variety of projects, one of which will be a long-term project. We'll talk more about that later. You will be expected to write at least 1 and possibly 2 or 3 lab reports. There is a very formal style to these, and you will be graded not only on content, but on your adherence to those stylistic requirements. There will be a variety of activities and labs throughout the year, and all of those activities, all of those assessments will be used to generate your term grade and your year-end grade. So, what can we do to make this successful? I have expectations for you as well as for myself. Firstly, you will arrive on time. I used to have 15 minutes of cleaning if you were 5 minutes late. That becomes more of an issue for me. If you miss material, if you miss that time, that's your responsibility. If you're more than 10 minutes late, you'll be marked absent, unexcused for the class. Very cut and dried. If I read the attendance and you're not here, you're absent. Please be respectful. It's important to listen to what other people have to say, to contribute when you have something to contribute. Please don't occupy the space just to occupy the space. If you don't have anything to say that's contributory, don't say it. And be considerate of others. You might think that someone has just asked the stupidest question on the planet. You can think that loudly in your head, but perhaps that person is asking a question in a way that they can, but it really is revealing a deeper confusion that maybe you yourself share. So don't dismiss people's questions out of hand. The expectation is you work safely. There are times when we will be using lab goggles to protect our eyes in case there's a spill. I will ask you once to use them. If you choose not to, you will simply be asked to leave the room and you'll get a 0 for that activity. We also expect you not to throw things in the classroom, no bouncing balls. The usual good, safe expectations apply. Here is my big pet issue for those of you who are taking note. I expect you to create honest products. That means no plagiarizing and no copying other people's work. I may not catch you the first time or even the second time, because I'm not looking for that. I'm assuming that you're doing your own work. But if I find that two pieces of work are identical, both of the people or all of the people involved will receive a 0, and you will have to report to the dean. Very clear policy. The second time, you can suffer extreme consequences, including having your parents come in. Second biggie under honest products is data. Now, sometimes you think, oh, that wasn't the right data. I think I'll just fudge it a little bit because I know what it should be. That's wrong. That's wrong data. The data you collect is the data. It's good data. Data you make up is wrong. If I find that you're making up data, you will receive a 0 for the lab and you will not be able to make it up. So if you're absent for legitimate reasons, then you can take the makeup test at the end of the term. It's cumulative. It covers all the material within the term. It's always on the last Thursday of the term. Make sure your parents do not schedule doctor's appointment, orthodontist appointments on the last Thursday X block of the term. Also, if you're in the state finals, you can let your coach know you'll be coming late because you have to do the makeup test. There are no exceptions to this. Late work, the work that you're required to pass in is due on a particular date at the beginning of class. Let me repeat that. The date is the date it's due at the beginning of class. If you pass it in at the end of class, if you pass it in at the end of the day, it's still late and it's 20% off the total possible points. So if an assignment is worth 50 points and you pass it in late, you've lost 10 points off whatever point total you have. Timeliness is an important attribute, especially when it comes to junior thesis time. So, as a student, you have certain responsibilities, and I expect that you should expect the same things from me. Contribute thoughtfully to the class discussion. I don't want to monopolize the class discussion, and neither should anyone else in the class, but every one of us should contribute what we think is relevant to the conversation. You need to be respectful of other people in the room, and you need to respect their opinions, even when you don't agree with them. You need to conduct yourself safely during both lab and lecture. We've talked a little bit about that already. I really want you to become a scientist, and that means developing a way of thinking that's critical and thoughtful and uses logic and evidence to build to conclusions. Do your homework in a timely manner. You should expect me to provide timely feedback. I expect you to provide your material in a timely manner. If you're absent or sick for any reason and you miss an assignment, you need to make sure that you talk to me as soon as you're back so we can put a plan in place. And finally, and this actually, the most important attribute that you will learn in your junior year is to ask for help and clarification beforehand. Beforehand, not the day of. Okay? That means that you need to read the materials ahead and be prepared to identify those places where you're confused. The mark of a mature learner is someone who knows what they don't know and can then ask a question to get clarification. We all have different learning styles. In fact, we learn visually, we learn by hearing, which is called auditory learning, and we learn by doing, which is called kinesthetic learning. So all three of these learning styles, all of us have. But each of us has it to a varying degree. Some of us are very visual learners, and we prefer to merely look at things in order to understand them. Others of us cannot look at something and understand. We have to hear someone talk about it and explain it. And then there's a group of us that have to actually manipulate things in order to understand them. Good learning involves all three so that you can stand back at the end, see what you've created, and admire it. I hope you have a fabulous year in biology. I hope that you grow to love the discipline as much as I do, and that you really understand and appreciate the complexity that is you.